Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki, Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. I wanted to keep singing because you were all singing so beautifully. I wanted to keep hearing you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, text number 14. But before we do that, because it is the transcendental appearance day of Srimati Gangamata Goswamini, and because I have some connection with her and I'm inspired by her, I really wanted to narrate the pastimes of Gangamata Goswamini on this day before we continue with today's text. Okay, are we ready to hear? Okay, so Gangamata Goswamini, she was a personality who appeared about 421 years ago, just after the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this world. So there was a princess by the name of Sachi who was born in Bengal, and her father was Naresh Narayan, King Naresh Narayan. And Sachi Devi, from when she was a young girl, she didn't have much inclination towards material life, and she was, from a young age, very absorbed in the pastimes of the Lord. And very quickly she learned everything she needed to learn at school, as well as all the Vedic literatures. And then as she grew older, she became more and more beautiful, and her parents wanted her to marry. But after some time, she explained to them that she would never marry anyone in this mortal world. She refused to marry. And then her parents became a little concerned, but they realized that she wouldn't marry. And then they left this world, and she became the queen. And she ruled very nicely and looked after the citizens very nicely. And then after some time, she passed the kingdom to some other relatives, and she wanted to go on pilgrimage to try and find a spiritual master. So she went to many places, and she went to Jagannath Puri. And then one day, as she was standing in front of the deities, she realized that she needed to go to Vrindavan. So she traveled by foot. She traversed across the country to go to Vrindavan. And there in Vrindavan, she met her spiritual master, Sri Haridas Goswami. And Krishnadas Kaviraj, he describes Haridas in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But this Haridas is not the same Haridas as Haridas Thakur, who was the associate of the Lord. This Haridas was actually a disciple of Ananta Acharya. And Ananta Acharya was the disciple of Gadadhar. So Gadadhar was the direct associate of Lord Chaitanya. And then his disciple was Ananta Acharya. And then Ananta's disciple was Gadadhar Goswami. And it was Haridas Goswami. And Haridas was described as being known all over the world, very gentle, tolerant, peaceful, magnanimous, grave, sweet in his words, and very sober in his endeavors. And he was very respectful to everyone and worked for the benefit of all. That's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And when Sachi came to know this personality, she was very inspired by him, and she wanted to be initiated by him. But he explained to her that in order to receive initiation, she would have to give up her king or queenly attire and live in Vrindavan as a very simple person. And in order to test her, he said, actually, this is not a place for a queen like yourself. You should go back home and worship the Lord from your kingdom. There's no need for you to stay here in Vrindavan and live such a simple life. It will be very difficult. But she was inspired by his test to remain in Vrindavan, and she gave up her queenly attire, and she lived a very austere life there in Vrindavan, and everyone was quite amazed by her absorption and her ability to live such a simple life. And then Haridas, his heart became softened, and he called Sachi Devi to him, and he said that he would give her initiation. And then it was on the day of Ekadashi that he actually did initiate her. And Sachi was very blissful. She was very happy. And she continued wearing only rags, and she went from home to home in Vrindavan begging alms. It's described that she went from one place to another like a bumblebee who took a little pollen from each flower. And she stayed on the banks of the Yamuna. That's where she resided. And then her spiritual master instructed one of his other disciples, Lakshmi Priya, who was just a little older than Sachi, about 25 years older. He instructed her to stay with Sachi Devi so that she wasn't alone. He didn't want that she was alone. And then together they were chanting, and Sachi herself would chant 100,000 names of the Lord every day. And then Lakshmi Priya, she would chant 300,000 names of the Lord every day. And they resided together there in Vrindavan on the banks of Radhakund. And then one day again, her spiritual master instructed her to come to see him, and then he said that she should go back to Jagannath Puri and re-establish the temple of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So this was at a time when all of the Lord's associates had left this world, and so she went back to Jagannath Puri, and within the crumbling, desiccated area of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's ashram, she discovered the Damodar Shalagram Shila. And then she began to engage the local devotees there in re-establishing this space, and she worshipped this Shalagram Shila perfectly according to the rules and regulations of the scriptures. And then from there she started giving classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, and people from very far would come to hear her because they really liked the classes. And then one day the king of Jagannath Puri, Mukunda Dev, he wanted to hear her classes, but he thought if he went in his kingly attire, then people would have a big procession for him in his honor. So he thought, let me go in disguise. So he went dressed as a brahmana to hear from Sachi. And when he heard her Srimad Bhagavatam discourse, he thought, wow, this is really wonderful, and he felt inspired to give her something. He wanted to give her something, and then Lord Jagannath actually appeared in his dream and said to him that he could give her a place on the banks of the Sweta Ganga. So the Sweta Ganga wasn't exactly the Ganges itself, but it was a pool of water named as Sweta Ganga because it was named after a king named Shweta who lived in Treta Yuga, which was many, many years before. And he was a king who had a vision of how the demigods would come to Jagannath Puri and they would offer all these different preparations to Jagannath. And he was thinking, wow, these demigods are making all these offerings and I can't offer what they are offering, and he felt very disheartened. And then he had another vision where he saw that the Lord himself was accepting his own offerings, and he felt, I've received the mercy of the Lord, and he was very grateful. And then Jagannath himself actually granted him the boon, a boon of being honored in this way, that there was a tank of water there which was excavated, and that would be known as Shweta Ganga, named after him. So this was actually a place related to the Ganges, but not quite the Ganges. And there was a space there that the king wanted to give Sachi Devi. But at first Sachi Devi didn't want to accept this. She thought, I'm a renunciate. I don't need land. I don't need any opulence. So she didn't want to accept it. But then eventually the king convinced her, because he said that this is the order of Jagannath. This is the desire of Jagannath. So please, you accept this. And then one day, on an auspicious day, on the Mahavaruni Snana, that's the day where many people go to bathe in the Ganges, Sachi Devi wanted to go, but she thought, I have accepted this service of taking care of this temple, and I was instructed not to leave Jagannath Puri, so I can't go. And then she had a dream where Jagannath approached her and told her that actually the Ganges wants to see you, so please you must go to Sweta Ganga, which is non-different. In the middle of the night, go to the Ganges there and take your bath. So Sachi Devi followed his instructions, and in the middle of the night she went to bathe there. And as she bathed there, the actual Ganges, coming from the lotus feet of the Lord, started washing over her and washing over the whole city of Jagannath Puri. And many people were very pleased, and they were all taking bath in the Ganges together, and many beautiful sounds like celestial voices surrounded them, and it was a very strange and auspicious occurrence. And at this time, the temple was meant to be locked, and nobody was meant to be inside. But the guards, they woke up, and the king woke up, having heard all these sounds. And then they heard sounds inside the temple as well, and they were thinking, but no one is inside. So what is that? And they opened up the doors, and then they saw Sachi Devi inside the temple room by herself. And then of course they thought that she was a thief, so they locked her into jail. And then from there she was peacefully chanting the Mahamantra, and she was not at all disturbed. But then Jagannath came in a dream to the king, and he said, how dare you? I have brought her to see me, and you have now locked her into jail. You should release her, and you should accept initiation from her and beg her forgiveness. So then the king, he did this, and he accepted initiation and apologized to her, and she could understand how all of this was being arranged by the Lord. And then later, as she continued giving her classes, the king again actually wanted to offer her something, but he had already given land, so she accepted only this, that after every midday offering in Jagannath Puri, then 2 containers of Mahaprasadam, 1 container of vegetable, and a cloth, and 160 paisa should be given to the temple there at Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And even today this is still going on. And there's this place there called the Gangamata, where you can go and see different deities. The deity that she used to worship, which belonged to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya before her, and along with some other deities. One of the deities is named Rasika Roy, and he used to stay in Jaipur in Rajasthan with Chandra Sharma. But Rasika appeared in the dream of Chandra, and he said, you're not worshipping me properly. I want you to take me all the way to Jagannath Puri and give me to Gangamata Goswamini. Oh yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to say why Sachi became known. Yeah, Sachi became known from that day of having been washed into the temple of Jagannath as Gangamata Goswamini. So then Rasika Roy, the deity, instructed this Brahmana, please take me to go and see her, because you're not taking care of me properly. And if you don't take me, I will curse you and your whole family. So the Brahmana traveled very far, and when he approached Gangamata, he asked, please, can you accept this deity and worship this deity? And she told him that, no, I don't have as much opulence as is needed to worship such a deity. I live a a very simple life. I'm engaged in manasa seva. So she didn't want to accept this deity. But then finally the Brahmana just hid the deity amongst the tulsi bushes, and he went away because he understood that the deity desired this and he wouldn't accept anything else. And then he appeared in her dream and he said, "You can't just leave me here. I have come for your service and I'm hungry and you're not looking after me." So eventually she had to go and find him in the bushes, and she started taking care of him. And then today, if you go to the Gangamata in Jagannath Puri, you'll see that there are a few deities, including this deity who she found in the bushes, who wanted to be served by her. And that is the pastime of Srimati Gangamata Goswamini. There are many other details which I didn't mention, but that's the basic overview. And now looking at today's text in Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is Canto 4, Chapter 11, text number 14. Samprasane Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gune Vimukto Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati Samprasane Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gune Vimukta Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati Samprasane Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gune Vimukto Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati Samprasane Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gune Vimukto Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati. Shri Radharanath Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Samprasane Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gune Vimukto Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati Samprasane Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gune Vimukta Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati Samprasane Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gune Vimukta Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati Samprasane Bhagavati Purusha Prakrite Gune Vimukta Jiva Nirmukto Brahma Nirvanam Richati. Samprasane, upon satisfaction, Bhagavati, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purusha, a person, Prakrite, from the material, Gune, modes of nature, Vimukta, being liberated, Jiva Nirmukta, freed from the subtle body also. Brahma, unlimited. Nirvanam, spiritual bliss. Richati, achieves. Translation: one who actually satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead during one's lifetime becomes liberated from the gross and subtle material conditions. Thus, being freed from all material modes of nature, he achieves unlimited spiritual bliss. Purport. In the previous verse, it has been explained that one should treat all living entities with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. By such behavior, one satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and upon his satisfaction, the devotee immediately becomes free from all material conditions. The Lord also confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita. Anyone who sincerely and seriously engages in my service immediately becomes situated in the transcendental stage, wherein he can enjoy unlimited spiritual bliss. Everyone in this material world is struggling hard in order to achieve achieve blissful life. Unfortunately, people do not know how to achieve it. Atheists do not believe in God, and certainly they do not please Him. Here it is clearly said that upon pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one immediately attains to the spiritual platform and enjoys unlimited blissful life. To become free from material existence means to become free from the influence of material nature. The word samprasane, which is used in this verse, means being satisfied. A person should act in such a way that the Lord is satisfied by the activity. It is not that he himself is to be satisfied. Of course, when the Lord is satisfied, the devotee automatically becomes satisfied. This is the secret of the process of Bhakti Yoga. Outside of Bhakti Yoga, everyone is trying to satisfy himself. No one is trying to satisfy the Lord. Karmis grossly try to satisfy their senses, but even those who are elevated to the platform of knowledge also try to satisfy themselves in a subtle form. Karmis try to satisfy themselves by sense gratification, and Jnanis try to satisfy themselves by subtle activities or mental speculation and thinking themselves to be God. Yogis also try to satisfy themselves by thinking that they can achieve different mystic perfections. But only devotees try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotee's process of self-realization is completely different from the process of karmis, jnanis, and yogis. Everyone else is trying to satisfy himself, whereas the devotee tries only to satisfy the Lord. The devotional process is completely different from the others. By working to please the Lord, by engaging his senses in the Lord's loving service, the devotee is immediately situated on the transcendental platform, and he enjoys unlimited blissful life. So the translation again is, one who actually satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead during one's lifetime becomes liberated from the gross and subtle material conditions. Thus, being freed from all material modes of nature, he achieves unlimited spiritual bliss. So we're at a part in Bhagavatam where Dhruva's brother was killed by a yaksha, and then he went to avenge his brother, and he declared war on the whole of the yaksha society, and he started killing everybody, all of the yakshas. And then as the war is going on, he's successful in killing many yakshas, and he himself is unharmed. And then his grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, he wants to advise Dhruva that actually his activities were not pleasing the Lord. So he goes to instruct Dhruva, and he explains that he should actually stop this killing because there was only one yaksha who actually killed his brother, and now he is killing all of the yakshas. And he says that although because you are a devotee, the yakshas actually attain liberation, because all of the killing done by a devotee is actually also auspicious, and it's all the arrangement of the Lord ultimately, still you should understand that it's not proper for you to behave in this way. And he's trying to explain to Dhruva the proper behavior of a devotee. And this is also for us to learn as well and to follow. And he explains how, in the previous verse, he's explaining that the Lord is very satisfied with his devotee when the devotee greets other people with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. So he's trying to advise Dhruva on the qualities that a devotee is meant to manifest, and he's trying to advise him to follow this and not to kill the yakshas, but rather to set the example. And in this verse today, one who actually satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead during one's lifetime becomes liberated from the gross and subtle material conditions. Thus, being freed from all material modes of nature, he achieves unlimited spiritual bliss. So, we're being advised on how to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the result of doing that. So, we're reading that the Lord is satisfied when we have these qualities and we show these qualities to other living entities. And then he's so pleased that he protects us by his spiritual energy, that we become situated on the transcendental platform. We become freed from the modes of material nature simply if we engage with other living entities in this way, with tolerance, with mercy, with friendship, and with equality. So we know that Krishna is pleased when we are chanting and when we engage in devotional service according to his rules and regulations. But now we're also hearing what are the qualities of a devotee that please the Lord. What are those qualities that we're supposed to try to cultivate within our hearts? And they are tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. And these qualities are actually exhibited by a Madhyam Adhikari. It's explained in the previous purport that someone who is on that second level of devotional service, the Madhyam stage, it's actually his duty to deal with others according to these qualities of tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. And all of us actually also are instructed to cultivate these qualities because we're all meant to rise to the platform of being a Madhyam Adhikari. Srila Prabhupada didn't want us to remain neophytes because this is a preaching movement and the Madhyam is the preacher. So we're all meant to be rising to that platform of Madhyam Adhikari. We're all meant to be trying to live according to these qualities. And of course, over time, as we do actually reach that stage, then those qualities also would come to us, because all the good qualities come to a devotee who is practicing Krishna consciousness. He gives these good qualities. So, here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that by such behavior, one satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And upon his satisfaction, the devotee immediately becomes free from all material conditions. So we may, for ourselves, think that, well, at some point we have tried to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and surely at some point he must have been at least a little satisfied by our service. But still we find that we're not really immediately freed from all material conditions. We still are experiencing the modes of material nature. And Srila Prabhupada was asked this question that how is it that a devotee who is supposedly transcendental can still experience the modes of material nature? It seems a little contradictory. And he said that it's because we're on the boat of the transcendental position, but the boat is still swayed by the modes of material nature. So the wind will come and the waves will come. It's still swayed, but at least that shelter is there, the boat is there, and actually then all of you are situated in that transcendental position. Although the modes of material nature sway the boat sometimes, but we always have that shelter to return to, and we can again be situated in that transcendental position at any moment if we sincerely take shelter in that boat. And then Srila Prabhupada explains how it is clearly said that upon pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one immediately attains to the spiritual platform and enjoys unlimited blissful life. So in another class on the first canto of Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada explained that the devotee does not die. He never actually dies. And we know that beautiful poem by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that he reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die, for thou art living still in sound. A Vaishnav dies to live, and in living spreads the holy name all around. So the Vaishnav is always present and never actually dies, and their life is unlimitedly blissful. They're always blissful. They're living always a blissful life. Oh yes. So we're talking a lot about pleasing the Lord, and Srila Prabhupada says here that atheists do not believe in God, and certainly they do not please Him. So we cannot please the Lord unless we actually know who He is. Srila Prabhupada said that you can't love someone who you don't know, and unless you love someone, you wouldn't want to serve them. So atheists, they're denying the existence of the Lord. They're not interested in even acknowledging that He is there. So of course they cannot love Him. They don't want to therefore serve Him, and then they're not able to really please Him. But someone who does actually know the Lord and who is trying to please Him, they then achieve this unlimited blissful life in due course of time. Although here we read immediately, because it is immediately available, it is for us to make the endeavor to receive that mercy which is being given to us at all times. And Prabhupada says here, when the Lord is satisfied, the devotee automatically becomes satisfied. This is the secret of the process of Bhakti Yoga. So there was a question last week, Tuesday, where Swami Damodar Prabhu asked Madhurya Kadambini, how is it that sometimes when we're engaging in devotional service and we can understand that this is pleasing to the Lord, still we are actually not experiencing any satisfaction? Maybe it's very hard for us actually. He was saying that even though we can understand theoretically it's pleasing to the Lord, and we can understand theoretically that when we satisfy the Lord, we also feel satisfied. But why is it that we're not experiencing that satisfaction, even though we know that the Lord is being pleased? And it's sometimes, Guru Maharaj explains that it's more pleasing to the Lord when we offer a service that is what is needed, what He wants for us to do. And an example can be given if someone is thirsty and they need a glass of water, and you give them a glass of water, then they're satisfied. But if you give them something else that they don't need at that time, when they really just need water, then that's not going to be as satisfying. So sometimes there may be a service we have to engage in which is needed, although for us it may be very difficult. Maybe it's really hard to get water. Or maybe you're in the middle of the desert and you have to go and walk for thousands of kilometers to get to a well, to get the water, to give it to someone. Maybe that service is just excruciatingly painful and difficult. But that is what is needed, and if you do that, then the Lord is pleased. So it's not always that it's easy for us. And I also asked my Guru Maharaj about qualities of a devotee. It's relating to this because we're speaking about these 4 different qualities that a devotee is meant to exhibit. I was asking, we can understand qualities in themselves to be material, just like how we are not these bodies. the qualities of the body is not who we really are. So then the qualities also of a person, like the more subtle qualities, I was asking, surely they are also material. But for a devotee, because they're purified, is there a percentage of qualities which are actually spiritual qualities, which are coming, although all good qualities come from Krishna, for a materialist those qualities may be manifest for a short period of time and then unmanifest again once the pious credit runs out. But for a devotee, is there a percentage of qualities which is manifest from the soul? Does it shine through, in other words? And my Guru Maharaj answered in this way. He said that it overlaps when a devotee is in a material body. So although a devotee may be self-realized, they may even understand that in the spiritual world they are a cowherd boy. They may understand that. And at the same time, within this world, maybe they're in the body of a woman, and in the spiritual world they don't exhibit the qualities of femininity, whereas in this world they do. And there will be other characteristics and qualities along with that, and along with what they like to do in this world, which they don't even do there. So they may have these material qualities still, on the one hand, and at the same time, in the spiritual world, they don't exhibit those qualities. So it overlaps. Even for a pure devotee, while they're in this body, there will be certain services that they like to do. So they may not like to get the water, even. For example, looking back at the example, maybe that's something that they're not inclined to do. But if they do it, they please the Lord. And we cannot estimate satisfaction on the basis of our senses, because our real senses are covered over. And Srila Prabhupada gives this example in our class. On the first canto, it's the second chapter, text 33, he explains that it's like if your tongue is covered, if you cover your tongue and you're trying to taste so many nice preparations, but of course you cannot taste anything because your tongue is covered. So our senses are also covered. There's going to be no enjoyment. At times there may be no enjoyment as we are serving. And Srila Prabhupada said that you have to uncover, you have to discover. That discovering process is devotional service. The more you are engaged in devotional service, the more your senses become pure or uncovered. And when it is completely uncovered, without any designation, then you are capable to serve Krishna. So at present, our senses are still covered over, and we don't experience real satisfaction because we're only basing satisfaction on the senses. And Srila Prabhupada explained there also that we enjoy the action and reaction of the three modes of material nature, but actually that enjoyment is in the mind, and that is not real enjoyment. He said real enjoyment is when we are freed from the embodiment of the 5 elements, the gross elements and the 3 subtle elements. So that enjoyment that we experience is actually only Maya, it is the mind's creation. And he said that, and now this is in a purport to Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 19, Text 24. He said that real happiness is described in the Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 6, Text 21. In the spiritually joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. Then he goes on to explain that one has to perceive happiness by the super senses. The super senses are not the senses of the material elements. Every one of us is a spiritual being, aham brahmasmi, and every one of us is an individual person. Our senses are now covered by material elements, and because of ignorance we consider the material senses that cover us to be our real senses. The real senses, however, are within the material covering. Dehinosmin yata dehe. Within the covering of the material elements are the spiritual senses. Sarvapari nirmuktam tat paredvena nirmalam. When the spiritual senses are uncovered, by these senses we can be happy. Satisfaction of the spiritual senses is thus described. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchate. When the senses are engaged in devotional service to Rishikesh, then the senses are completely satisfied. Without the superior knowledge of sense gratification, one may try to satisfy his material senses, but happiness will never be possible. One may increase his ambition for sense gratification and even achieve what he desires for the gratification of his senses, but because this is on the material platform, he will never achieve satisfaction and contentment. So we can only achieve satisfaction and happiness once we're engaging in the service of the Lord and once our senses, our real senses, become uncovered. Okay, I think we'll end there for today. See if there's... Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections? Okay. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki. Gaur Premanande.